Hello and welcome to a new series that I'm going to be starting on my channel. It's not going to be a week off, it's going to be more of like a recurring series every time that I feel like getting a video to it. I do think this week you're going to get a few more videos, so it will feel a little bit like you're getting a week off, but I will just post a few videos and then I will revisit the series every now and then when the mood strikes. But basically, a few months ago, after I bought the Natasha Denona I Need a Nude palette, I rearranged my Glam and I Need a Nude palettes, and I sort of like made a mock-up of the two to create my perfect like neutral glam palette. So now my Glam and my I Need a Nude palette look like this. Basically, I have all of the mattes from both palettes in the outer packaging of the I Need a Nude with a couple of the shimmers, and I have all of the shimmers, like the rest of the shimmers, metallics, that kind of thing, in the outer packaging of the Glam palette. Now I am going to insert live swatches of both of the palettes so that you can see how all the mattes look next to each other, all the metallics, how everyone looks all together. Basically, it's going to be a lot of really neutral, like low-key type looks, a bit more on the smoky side or a bit more on the lighter side depending on my mood. And because you know me and sometimes I like to sneak color into my looks, there will probably be colors put from other brands and other palettes so that I can put pops of color every now and then, again when the mood strikes. So basically that is the general idea, and the biggest motivator behind this series is that I felt like I didn't really get a lot of use out of the I Need a Nude palette after the initial, review that I did of it and the 3 looks, and I never actually touched the 2 palettes after I did the mock-up. Like, I did that, I put them back into my drawers, and then I focused on other things. I got distracted by other palettes, and especially the Bijou Brilliance collection from Pat McGrath Labs. In addition to that, I was traveling a lot, so I never really got to revisit this, because to be frank with you, I don't still even know whether this mock-up was a good idea. Maybe after using the palettes in this way, I will discover that I would rather have them back in their older configuration, and then I will put back everything from Glam back in its place, everyone from I Need a Nude back in its place, and I will just rearrange them the way that they originally looked like. But for the time being, they look like this, and I would like to dig into them. You may already have seen that I have done my base makeup, because in the interest of time today I'm not going to do foundation, concealer, powder, that kind of thing with you, but we are going to do bronzer, blush and highlighter. So I am immediately going to start with a little bit of bronzer, and I'm also going to immediately brag a bit about it, because this is my Chanel Soleil Tan de Chanel bronzer. Look at this, this is a pan. I never thought I would see the day when I see a pan in this bronzer, because it looks so massive. This is like the oldest version of this bronzer. They've since released this bronzer in different sort of colors, and I think they've added a color or something. Originally it was just this one color, and I believe they have changed the formula, so even if I were to pan this in 50 years from now, I'm not sure that I would repurchase it, because I've heard not so positive reviews of the new colors and the new formula. But since that day isn't coming anytime soon, for now I'm just going to enjoy this pan, and I'm going to use as much of the bronzer as possible before it goes bad, because I've had this since we moved into this house, which was in 2017. For blush, I'm going to grab the cream blush in the shade Peach Lotus from Pat McGrath Labs, and from the color of my blazer you have probably already guessed that I'm going to be doing a red lipstick, so the eye look will be rather low-key, and not just any red lipstick, but of course it has to be Ribbon, because this color is basically the absolute perfect match for the shade Ribbon from Lisa Eldridge. To highlight, I'm going to take the Dior Couture Luminizer in the shade Nude Glow. That's a lot. let me quickly give that a little bit of a blendy blend, because I think I applied a little too much on my brush. Oh, I really like this highlighter so much. The tone, the shine, the texture, everything about it is glorious. I'm going to spritz my sponge with a little bit of Fix Plus just to fix everything on my face. And I apologize again if I still sound a little bit raspy, but unfortunately I am still recovering from that cough that Nicola passed on to me last week. It's so strange. I've never really had a cold of sorts where I literally have no other symptom but a cough. And that is also what he had. My husband has it as well, so it's, I don't know, it's some sort of a very strange cold. Let's get started on the eye look. Now, because I've rearranged these palettes, I don't really know the names of any of these eyeshadows anymore, so whatever is written on the palette is not really matching with the actual eyeshadow in there. I have a vague idea what comes from Glam and what comes from I Need a Nude, so I will try to at least indicate from which palette the eyeshadows are coming from. But even that you should take with a grain of salt, because there's only so much that a 40, almost 1-year-old lady can remember. So the first shade I'm going to grab is this base shade over here, which I'm pretty sure comes from the Glam palette. I think with the mattes it will be a little bit easier to recognize who comes from where, because the mattes in the Glam palette have actually a different texture to them. They're a little bit softer to the touch and a little bit less like hard pressed into the pan, so when I put my finger into the eyeshadow I can immediately tell which palette it comes from, because the ones from the I Need a Nude felt completely different to me. So I'm just going to fluff this shade here through my crease and a bit above my crease, because I've got a lot of real estate to cover here. The raspiness really gets worse when I talk a lot, because if I don't talk a lot it feels fine, and I think the cough is actually finally resolving, but as soon as I start to talk a bit more I really start to struggle. I'm going to highlight on my brow bone with this shade, which I'm pretty sure comes from the I Need a Nude palette. It is just a perfect matte brow bone highlight for me. And the reason I still like to highlight with a matte shade underneath my brow bone is not because it is completely necessary or it really does that much for the eye look, but because the powders usually have a bit of a blurring quality to them, and I always find that I have a little bit more texture under my brows because I've plucked away hairs, or for whatever reason I just have a lot of texture that I really dislike on my brow bone. So that is the main reason I always apply like a skin colored eyeshadow as a brow bone highlight. The next shade I'm going to grab is this more mid-tone brown over here, which I'm also pretty sure comes from the Glam palette, because again it feels a little bit softer to the touch. And I'm lightly going to run that here in the outer portion of the eye, very very lightly, just for additional contouring there. But I want to keep this look very light on the lid, so I don't want to create too much depth and darkness, just a little bit of extra definition. Next I'm going to apply a bit of glitter glue. This is my NYX glitter glue. I'm going to just put the tiniest bit of that all over my lid before I apply the metallic shade. So for my lid, I'm first going to apply a little bit of this shade here, which is more like a neutral beige metallic. Again, this comes pretty sure from the Glam palette, and I'm going to pop that all over the eyelid as a very thin layer, because I want to apply something else over top. I definitely want to make this look a little bit more sparkly, so now I'm going to take this shade here, which is the most impactful shade from I Need a Nude. It was in the smack middle of the palette, so I think that shade is called Muse. But again, take that with a grain of salt. And I'm going to layer that shade over top of the lid shade that I applied. But I'm going to apply that in very small increments, because that shade can get quite textured if you go in with a very large amount on your finger. But it will create such beautiful sparkle and dimension on the lid if you apply it over anything else. You can also use it on its own, but I prefer to use it as a topper. In my inner corners, I'm going to adjust things up just a little bit, and I'm going to take this shade here, which is, I think, one of the new textures, one of those like wet textures from the I Need a Nude palette, this one over here, which is pink with a little bit of, I want to say, bluish type sparkle. And I think it's just going to create a little bit of something for the look, because it has a different tone to it, but it still has a lot of light and shine. And to finish off on my lower lash line, I'm going to take this beautiful warm chocolate metallic from the Glam palette, and I am going to run that very lightly here on my lower lashes. Okay, let's do sparkle moment. I don't think I'm going to do this for every single look with this palette, because not every single look will have a need for artificial lighting, because in this specific case I applied that lid shade which is very sparkly and creates a bit of a wet lid effect, so I wanted to show you how this looks under artificial lighting. Of course, on my lips I have the always impeccable velvet ribbon from Lisa Eldridge. Essentially my most used, as you can see from the use of the bullet, lipstick, like Lisa Eldridge lipstick in my collection. I do have a lot more use on my Lucents, but I feel like that's cheating, because the Lucents are so creamy, it's a bit easier to like show use on these lipsticks, whereas with a velvet, where you basically don't even have to reapply sometimes during the day, it's very hard to go through a bullet. So the fact that I already have used up so much of ribbon says enough about how much I love this red. Anyway, I hope that you enjoyed this look. Obviously super low-key, obviously these are all going to be very neutral, very boring in a way, but I'm also not going in with the expectation that I'm going to create very original and out-of-the-box looks. So I hope that you don't mind and you're going to enjoy this series anyway. Thank you so much for watching. Let me know what you think about this series, about the look, and I will see you again in my next video. Bye!